10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 351. Hey everybody, welcome back into episode 351 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. So happy you're here, and this week we're going to continue our series on the wonderful, amazing Hank Mobley by taking a look at a clip from one of his coolest up-tempo tunes called Roll Call, which is also the name of a great album that he put out. And we're going to talk about some concepts in it, as we usually do, and give you something to practice for the week. But before we jump into the episode, as always, just wanted to remind you this is a listener-supported show, which means it's listeners like you that keep this thing going, and it's really the only reason that we've gotten to 351 episodes. So if you would like to get PDF worksheets of everything that we talk about on every single episode, along with audio examples and other jazz education goodies, you can go over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and that will bring you over to Patreon, which is how we support this show. A small monthly donation gets you all of that stuff. And again, it just really keeps the show going. It is our only way of supporting ourselves. So quick shout out to some new patrons for this week. Thank you to our new $5 patrons, Eric, Dara, and Wan Chai. Thank you so much for joining up and becoming part of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family. And of course, to the over 350 supporters we have over there, thank you. We could not do this show without you. So again, it's our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and just search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson. Either way works. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. So as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at the tune Roll Call, and we're going to look at an 8-bar phrase, which is actually the opening 8-bar phrase of Hank's solo on this particular tune. This is really up-tempo. It's around 250 BPM, and I think that displays kind of a different style of playing from everybody, not just Hank Mobley. So sometimes we can gain a lot of insight into looking at different tempos and see how the person's playing changes a little bit at these different tempos. But actually, the thing that I want to look at as relates to this line that I'm presenting to you is something that we've talked about on the show a lot in the past, and that is vertical versus horizontal playing. So let me just define that real quick. I think that vertical playing, when you play a single line instrument, is you're doing a lot of arpeggios. You're doing a lot of wider intervals, like a third and wider. And horizontal playing is a lot of sort of scale-based playing, where the majority of the intervals are seconds, or maybe minor or major thirds, but nothing that really goes wider than that. And I think that Hank Mobley is one of the greatest examples of somebody who can play horizontally at the highest level possible. Hank Mobley likes to play a lot of these scale runs, and he just does so in such a complete and beautiful way that I want to talk about that a little bit, because a lot of us can really, and rightfully so, think that we have to play all of these really, really, really wide intervals to get a particular sound. And to some extent, yeah, of course we want to be able to play wide intervals because it's an interesting thing to do. But we also can study the fact that if you're really good at it, a horizontal way of playing is totally acceptable and can be really, really super interesting. And that's what we're going to look at today in this particular example. This is just a masterful display of playing horizontally. So again, this is the first 8 bars of Hank Mobley's solo on Roll Call. Let's listen to it a couple of times, and then we'll talk about what makes it so awesome. So just like such an interesting line, so many twists and turns in there. He just nails the changes, and the changes are not easy in this. You know, if you have the PDF, you'll see that it kind of moves around to a lot of different places. But again, what I want to talk about is sort of the interval structure. So if we look at the first two notes, the interval between the first two notes of this line is the interval of a fourth, okay? But then every other interval that's played in this entire excerpt is a third or narrower. So I'm talking major, minor thirds, and then they're all seconds, either major seconds or minor seconds, whole steps or half steps, from then on out for the entire 8 bars. So I would define this 8 bars as being almost purely a horizontal statement when it comes to texture and interval structure. And what I want you to notice is there's a couple of places where he plays basically all seconds, all scale patterns, and they just sound so wonderful. And in fact, there's some places where he's literally just for an entire measure playing a scale, playing nothing but a scale. But he does it in such a masterful way. And where he does choose to use those thirds is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So let's look at a couple of spots. In particular, I want to look at the 5th measure going into the 6th measure. So this is a 2-5-1 in concert D flat major, and he's putting his scale playing, his horizontal playing on display here in a really marvelous way. So if we look at that measure 5, he starts here, and then he plays basically all seconds, all the way until beat 4. Then he jumps up a major third. So a bunch of majors, or a bunch of seconds, and then one major third. And that third is so well placed. And then going on from that, in the next measure, he's literally just playing down a D flat major scale. You see, and he's such a master that he knows if he plays down that D flat major scale from the 5th, he's going to play the 5th again on the and of 4. And then if he goes down a half step, he lands on the G, which is the root of the next chord, because the next chord is a G minor 7 flat 5 concert, right? So he knows if he goes, everything's going to land absolutely perfectly. So out of these 2 measures, which are 100% filled with eighth notes, he uses one major third, and then everything else is a scale pattern, some kind of interval of a second. Just a wonderful and beautiful and masterful display of horizontal playing. And then when we also consider this statement as a whole and where he's putting the rests and where he's switching up the rhythm, where he's using dotted notes, where he's using triplets, this is really going to give us a ton of stuff to study and try to get into our own playing, even in just the span of 8 measures, which is really cool. And Hank Mobley does this all the time. It's like you can zoom in on just one little statement, and you can have so much to study. So here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to dive into this 8-bar phrase, and I want you to figure out, when does he go away from using either a major or a minor second, whole steps or half steps? Where does he put those intervals of major and minor thirds? And I want you to think about why he's doing that. Why is he changing the texture, and what makes it so effective? And then I want you to think about maybe how you can put that into your own approach for improvisation and see what you can do to take these lessons that Hank Mobley is giving us simply by just playing the saxophone and see how it can start to benefit you in your own playing. All right, I hope you found this useful. Let me know if you have any questions. And as always, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy out there. Remember, grab the PDF so that you can study it, and you support the show and keep it coming out by doing that. So again, go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today for instant access to all of that stuff. All right, We'll see you next week with another brand new episode, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.